One.
That means 5 minutes. Right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Woodley Towns Council's Strategy and Resources Committee, being held on the 22nd of April, 2025. Woodley Town Council meetings are now recorded, with the recorded streamed live and stored on the Town Council's YouTube channel. By virtue of attending the meeting, you consent to having your image and audio recorded for this purpose. If you do not wish for your image and audio to be recorded, then please do not stay for the meeting. For those in attendance, we're not expecting a fire drill tonight, so if you hear the fire alarm, please head to the nearest fire exit and congregate at the fire assembly point by the open centre at the front of Woodford Park. Thank you. It's good to see two fellow councillors sitting in the audience, and welcome. I know certainly you, June, are interested in some of the agenda items. The way I've managed that in the past is that when we go to discussion and debate, it's obviously for the committee members to do that, and only really when that's exhausted, I will then offer the opportunity to either of you to contribute. Okay, but I must point out, if your contributions can't be 25 minutes long, you know, because it's a courtesy that you're here, and we've got a hell of a agenda to. All right. Thank you. Apologies.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillors Horskins, Rowland and Swaddle. Councillor Horskins is attending the meeting virtually.
Thank you. Minutes, agenda item 3. Oh, declaration of interest. Any declaration? Mike?
Yes, Chairman, agenda item 10, community grants as the council's representative on the Woodley Community Centre. And as a volunteer driver, I fear I ought to declare an interest in that item, as there is a grant application before you.
Presumably that's prejudicial.
Yeah, that's fine. You don't need to leave the room.
I don't need to leave the room, but I won't participate in the debate.
Okay, thank you. Any others? No? Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting held on 21st January 2025. Can we have a show of approval? All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's unanimous. I'll find 2.5 hours to sign them. Item 4, actions and follow-ups, page 5. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chairman, can the officers give an indication as to what proportion of the £133,690 VAT received from HMRC has actually been reimbursed to our customers?
To date, nothing has been, because we're still awaiting from confirmation from the people I have written, or the council have written, various organisations, to get data so that we can confirm that we are paying the correct people, and also the account details from them. To date, we've only had one person reply as to the out of 12 that we have identified as eligible to reclaim.
Okay, so can I rephrase the question? How much of the £133,690 VAT are we expecting to repay to our customers?
I think we were looking at the potential for the ones that we could identify through invoices was within about the 30,000 or well within that. So it's like it wouldn't be more than that. What we have done is sent out a second draft of letters, which gives a timescale for responses of 6 weeks for responses on those wishing to claim. Some of those are a little difficult, and we've put advice in there because some of those organisations may have already claimed VAT back on those costs, so they need to be cautious about how that works. When we've been as open as we can in communicating.
So it sounds to me, Chairman, as the council is going to have a windfall of about £100,000.
At the end of the day, if you can't identify people, or you identify them and they don't respond, there's nothing more you can do.
Yeah.
Maybe knock on their doors.
What I would say, just for some context around that, in terms of HMRC's position on it, we've been really clear from the outset and in our conversations with HMRC that those funds, we would make those attempts to refund invoice bookings where possible, which is what we're doing. And over and above that, that any of those funds that are not reimbursable have been put into an earmarked reserve for Woodford Park Leisure Centre, rather than just go back into the pot for use elsewhere, which it was something I think they were.
It's on the same subject, so I can add
You
something.
might just, okay.
Can I just finish, Anne? I mean, so are we saying categorically that if we end up with a surplus, 100,000, we don't have to repay that to HMRC?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
So what I just wanted to ask on that subject is, is the information that these 12 organisations provide, is that very difficult to provide?
Only that we need to be very sure that they're the right people, and some of those clubs will have changes of personnel through that period of time, and checking the details of who the treasurer is and who the chairperson is and what the bank account details are. We've got to make some.
So it's just basic things like that about the societies. I mean, they're not having to quote the exact reimbursement, for example.
No, so initially the letter was for them to contact us and say that they wanted to make a claim, and then we would do the calculation based on the invoices that we've already identified for those periods.
Right, oh, okay, thanks. I've got other questions, so I don't know if this can ask them or not.
We're on the actions and follow-ups.
Yes, that's right, on the actions and follow-ups, yeah.
You've got-
Robert, I have a question. Oh, sorry, okay.
Let me go. Councillor Nagri.
It's related to same subject. It's written here to reclaim incorrectly charged VAT. Who is responsible for this incorrectly charged VAT?
HMRC. So there was a court case which found in favour of a council, and HMRC had to basically reverse the situation in terms of VAT charged on council-run sports bookings. So HMRC changed the rules, and for the period of time for which people could claim back, including ourselves, we were able to make that claim. So it was a court case which changed the rules.
Okay, and whatever is left, is there any specific clause that you are going to spend there, or you can spend that money anywhere?
Only that the council resolved to put it into an earmarked reserve specifically for Woodford Park Leisure Centre, so that money stays within the service from which it was obtained, which feels right, rather than it just going back into the pot.
Anybody else, just before Robert first, please.
Yes, hello everyone, good evening. Do we have an end date to this, i.e. will this finish at the end of the current financial year next April, or is this just going to be something that's going to take, is there an end date to it, please?
Yes, there will be. We set an end date, which I think was in 6 weeks' time for it's 30th of May, yes, for those claims to be made. By which time we will know who they are, and we'll make those arrangements for reimbursement as soon as possible after that. So yes, certainly within this financial year.
Oh, that's great. That's even better. Thank you.
David.
Yeah, just one question, Mr. Chair. Have we checked as far as any of those companies that may have gone into liquidation?
Yeah, part of basically the short questionnaire that we've sent them, it requires them to provide us with that information, and then we'll make those checks before we make any payment. So that's why it takes a little time to do that. Yeah.
Presumably, most of them are going to be charities anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, there is a bit of a mix.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Mike?
Changing the subject on page 6. The second item there, can the officers give an update, please, on how we're going with the installation of the borehole at the allotments, and confirm as to what its purpose is?
Yeah, so the purpose, and it came up as a suggestion, was to reduce the amount of piped in water that's used at the site, which has gone up over time as more and more tenants at the site. So we've now got 368, I think, tenanted plots, and a number of water butts, which is self-filling water butts, uses a lot of water. So the intention was to find a way to reduce that in an environmentally friendly way. We have managed to obtain some information on where that's worked elsewhere, and it's one of the items we're picking up with the new allotment tenants committee through our discussions to work out how we might do that and where might be the best place to do it.
I've got a question on behalf of June, because I save you from asking it. Let me go first, and then I'll bring you back in again. Minute 41, can you do an update on Weevil Park?
Yes, I've been requesting through the estates manager at Reading Borough Council for them to draft that lease document and get that to us. I haven't had enough response yet. I've been chasing that fairly regularly last time, a couple of weeks ago, I think. So I'm still waiting for a response.
Majid?
Yeah, I have two questions. First, related to it, have you proposed any change in lease terms and conditions, or Reading Borough staff, they have proposed any change? Will it be same?
Made no changes at all at the moment, just requested that they draft another lease agreement, and that they're prepared to do that. So that's as far as it's got at the moment.
Second one, on page number 5, meeting date November 21st, 23, and this water filling station is still pending. Its installation is pending. So do you have any idea how long it will take?
Yes, we've managed to resolve the issue we had around who was able to install it. So we've now resolved that. There is an agenda item on here relating to utilising currently unused earmarked reserve to buy the unit from, although there has been a donation from Rotary to actually fund the unit. So there's just been some work around that. Long and short of that is, from the point of ordering it, it should be about 6 weeks.
Hopefully, because it's pending from 20.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. There were a number of issues around where it would go, and then who would be able to actually install it. So
Can I request that if you haven't done already, you inform Rotary of the status? Because I've had one email that's asked that question.
Yeah.
What's going on?
yes, they're there.
And since they're very kindly donating money for it, they should really be in the loop. Okay. Anne, you had another question.
Yes, thank you. Item 67 at the top of page 6. It's stating back to January 20. I think infrastructure proposal to July 24. Documents due to be updated in light of this. Have they been updated?
Not yet. We are talking to our new IT provider about that, and I need to pick that up and follow that through with them. We've had a complete overhaul and update of our entire IT system and server setup to a cloud-based system, Office 365 setup, and I'm reliant on them to provide the technical detail about the security elements and things.
So do you have a sort of idea when you'll be able to have the documents up? You know, when the documents will be updated?
I need to get onto it and do that as soon as
Oh,
possible.
right,
So
okay.
I'd hope to report back to the next meeting with something a bit more positive.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on because we've got a lot of. Sorry, Majid, go ahead.
Yeah, I have this question, page number 6 and meeting date September 10th, 24. We had a microphone system earlier, but you mentioned in a meeting there were loopholes. So I just want to know what measures are taken this time that we don't repeat that mistake, because it's a technical thing.
Yeah, so there wasn't a mistake as such. We don't have a hearing loop system in the building. What we have done is procured a new system, which we're expecting by the end of May, which is similar to this in some ways. There'll be individual microphones. The system itself has a built-in loop facility, so that we'll have a hearing loop for those that need it in all of our council meetings, and much better sound quality for broadcasting on YouTube and for others joining.
Can I assume it's sort of similar to the borough, because you guys will have experienced the borough.
Yeah, so it's
Without the video thing.
it's gooseneck microphones, so on each table or one between two. But the sound quality is massively better than the units that we've got currently. We had a good road test of that a few weeks ago with that system.
And for example, suppose if there is any issue, any problem, will it be replaced?
Well, we have there's a support package with it if there's any issues surrounding it.
I would like to move on, please, because we spent 15 minutes on it and we've got some very, very important matters to discuss later on. So agenda item 5, page 8. This is the rather large report about the future upgrades, etc., of the theatre. We have, has it got in, Justin?
Yep.
We have
Julian.
Julian. We have they're both authors, aren't they?
At least it's on us.
Right. So I'm not sure whether every one of you has read 84 pages.
Yes.
Yes.
Well done. Oh, good. But what I was going to ask Julian to do, to be a surprise to him, but I'm sure he's okay, is just to give us a very quick, no more than 5 minutes max, overview of the report, and then we can go straight into discussion. Hopefully, it won't take too much discussion. You want to get Julian?
Yeah, Julie, can you hear us? I think he's just rejoining as a panelist, so he should pop up anyway.
Hello. Oh, hello. Let me turn the video on.
Hi, Julian.
Hello. Can you hear
Did
me? See me okay?
Did you hear what I said earlier?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, good evening. Yes, you just nice to be here and lovely to meet you. Thanks for the opportunity. So I think you asked me to do a very quick, no more than 5 minutes overview of the kind of review that we conducted with Matthew and the team support recently. If I understood you correctly, Chair.
Yes, you did. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yes, we were invited essentially to initially carry out a kind of an assessment and an overview of the current technical capability of the theatre, in particular in relation, obviously, to the council's desire to be able to increase the animation and participation of the theatre space, and obviously recognising that actually some of the technical production capability was outdated and was inhibiting increased use and participation of it. So our brief was to do a review of it, to provide then a kind of a technical response to that brief, and to give the council options in terms of the type of technical and production capability that the theatre could be capable of, or what that would mean in terms of cost, so options around different costs, and also most importantly what that would mean in terms of its ability as a venue to be able to attract new strands of content and programme, retain important existing users within the community and commercial, and what that would mean then from a kind of commercial perspective. So what impact that would have on the venue's kind of commercial resilience. And so the report that you have before you is the outcome of that, and essentially at what came out of our assessment is a range of proposals to increase the technical capability. We settled on the mid-range, which gives the venue really substantial and significant enhancements into its capability, which will attract new strands of content, really future-proof it, improve its efficiencies, improve the enjoyment both in terms of the producers, the users of the venue, but also most importantly the audience, and that's in particular in relation to sound and light. So increased sound capabilities to really enhance production, increase sound, and also just kind of increase the kind of connectivity between the space and the producers. I think alongside of that, we took a very detailed kind of immersion, if you like, into the small venue touring content, the types of shows that come into venues of the same scale. So we did the kind of benchmark case study assessment of similar venues, put forward some of those, And then the outcome of that work really led us to kind of propose on which the venue could be operated or might be operated going forward, and leading to a kind of a conversion from a kind of deficit, a cost to the council, to a commercial resilience where it could stand on its own. But most importantly, I think increase its economic impact to the town and its social value benefits by having substantial increase in participation, community use, audience engagement, youth activity, older adult participation. So a real broad range of activities to really support what is already taking place in the centre and in the town, but actually kind of create a cultural and experience hub for all generations and all elements of the society. We think, in conclusion, that there is, a really exciting prospect for the venue if investment is made in it, both from a technical point of view, but also in terms of its operational and delivery model. I suppose in a snapshot. Was that within my 5 minutes allocation?
Yes, that's really good. Thank you very much for being brief. So I know the fellow councillors really were chomping at the bit to start discussing and debating it. Just before I throw it open.
Yeah, I'm all yours.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Matthew, because he's the author of the report we've got here with the recommendations, just to, in essence, introduce it, and then we'll go into open forum.
I'll obviously keep this brief and won't go into too much specific detail because I know you've all read this. I think the key factor to remember is when we started looking at this in November, that the space after Woodley Theatre's demise 18 months ago was being utilised around 25% of the time. So that space in this building is 75% of the time not used at all. There are community groups that use that space and it is well used by the people who use it, but even they feel that the technical capabilities are a bit outdated for those groups. But for us to be able to get to the point of utilising much more of that space and really optimising its use, we have to make technical upgrades, otherwise the space becomes unusable, and you either think of completely shutting it or repurposing it for something else. But we have a fantastic theatre facility and therefore investment in it would seem to make sense. The benefit of getting Blue Horizon on, and I think this is what comes out about their work, is from their knowledge and experience, it proves that there is commercial viability to this process and this investment, and it won't be a wasted money. The technical upgrades do cover a wide area of the theatre. It's not just lighting, which will make a huge difference, obviously, but also improve sound, the ability to do cinema, and masking around the theatre, which will become much more flexible. At the moment, if you've been there, we have very low-level black tabs around the back. That's it. The ability to put in some new tabs that enable us to create wings, to remove wings, to have higher, it will change the feel in there. So there's a lot of really good value in those upgrades. And the content and programming strategy is key. It shows that we can provide a variety of events, which means for the widest audience of residents in Woodley and beyond, we should be attracting more people into the building, which again is vital for us, not just to get people who hire spaces coming in, but actually to invite people in to come and see things here and be more engaged with us and see what we do. So the recommendations in the report are fairly simple at this point. Blue Horizon suggested for the second phase of this project, if we consider what's happened so far as phase one, 6 stages. At this point in time, we're taking those and we're splitting them down, and we think that the next step is stage 2, which is the preparation of the project and approval. That's looking more in depth about that business plan, making it work for the building as a whole, and looking at our existing operating model, which is beyond the scope that Blue Horizon originally had. And stage 3 is very much the technical procurement elements. So we're suggesting we focus on those 2 stages. Blue Horizon have very helpfully costed out each stage. So for those 2 stages, which haven't been taken yet, that would cost 8,925, slightly different to what you've seen in the press. I've seen a couple of press articles that have suggested that was the amount we paid already for them. Just to clarify, that is for the next phase, that 8,925. So that is one recommendation in the report. Generally, there's a recommendation that we proceed along these lines. And the third recommendation within the report is that members approve in principle funding for the associated technical upgrades. We've given an indicative cost from Blue Horizon's quotes of 132,000. The precise method of funding will revert to this committee when we know the exact cost, and when at that time we have a good look and see. We do have earmarked reserves for this centre, which will have capacity at that time. We will have general reserves to pull down on. There are grant funds available from people like the National Lottery and the Theatres Trust, which we'll investigate. And also, at the end of that, there's the option of a PWLB loan as we've taken other centres. Without knowing the full cost and what grants come in, we won't know exactly what that is. But when we get closer to that, we will refer to you all to make that firm decision of what that funding looks like. But what I'm trying to say is there will be funding available for this if you are wishing to proceed down that route.
Okay, so just to reinforce, we're not talking about the later stages, particularly staff recruitment, etc. That's for another day, when we've got the technical stuff and we've actually started to build up, hopefully, the growth and when we can afford it. So I'm going to hold it, throw it out to the floor. Anne?
Well, actually, just on that point, Keith, I mean, it does actually say that we should recruit the theatre manager alongside doing the technical purchases during this year when it's all being built up. So you would have to do the recruitment within the first few months.
Not necessarily so. We have to shape and come in, you guys, because you've done most of the work. But bottom line is, we've got to learn to walk before we run.
Yeah.
So we could do the technical change and our dream of increased business doesn't occur, and we would have taken on someone. Take the theatre manager, they're quoting sort of 40,000 a year, that'll be sitting there and twiddling their thumbs. So that's why the officers have concentrated on 2 and 3 with a view that the rest will happen later when we know that the objective that we're trying to do is beginning to work.
I haven't finished. Sorry, I haven't.
Okay, let Mike, Matthew carry on.
If I could just say, so I think obviously the issue with the staffing at the moment is that what's proposed in here is from Blue Horizons' knowledge of venues that are very similar in size, but what it didn't take into account, because it was outside the scope, was the precise staffing model we already have in it. We already have a bookings manager that manages bookings for this venue, including the theatre. We already have a marketing communications manager that deals with things. And as you'll note later on from the personnel report, there are some staff changes. So we already have venues assistants that are covering the centre. Because that was outside the scope, we haven't been able to really look at that as a holistic view and say what that will look like. So without looking at that, we don't know exactly what that recruitment will look like. Having done that phase, we can do the procurement. The procurement alongside that, the procurement exercise will probably take us 5 to 6 months, because when your next meetings are June and September, we're not going to get a finalised tender for you to approve until September, by which stage we'll have hopefully a view on that recruitment of the business model. We can get approval at that point for whatever that staff structure might look like, and then at the point that we're going through the work of doing that technical work, we can recruit, which means at the point that that technical works may be in place early spring next year, we will have the staff in place to then push forward the programme. And that will be a case of, starting maybe smaller and build up. So I think the key is stage 2 will be us working much closer with Blue Horizon on that business model and getting it nailed down to what actually works for us in our situation.
Oh, sorry, I haven't finished yet. Please can I ask my other questions?
Yes.
Is there air conditioning in the theatre at the moment? Because it strikes me, one of the community feedback things does mention that, and I thought that would be quite essential for a professional venue, really. There's a door issue with the auditorium. Is that something to do with the changing rooms and the auditorium doors? Where is it? Actors change for
the dressing room.
Dressing rooms, thank you. There's some issue to do with that door and the door to the auditorium. I
don't know anything to do with those issues.
I mean, so I suppose my point being,
I don't mean to be disrespectful, Anne, but these are detailed. These are matters of so significant detail. I want to look at the bigger picture before we go into whether a door needs to be in place or replaced.
Well, Anne, yes. Respect the chair, okay? The issues that you are talking about, if they are issues, Matthew says he doesn't know about them, will be addressed. They will be addressed regardless of what we're talking about here. They have to be. If there are, so for instance, one of the changing rooms is like a sauna, etc. That needs to be addressed whether we do this or not. The door issue needs to be addressed whether we do this or not. This is, Mike is actually right. This is actually at a higher level, a bigger level, that we, it will act as a catalyst or a facilitator to go from 25% occupancy to something much, much higher there. Otherwise, we will, at the end of the day, we'll have to shut the theatre because it's absorbing too much money. So can I ask you, anything like the doors and what have you, they are outside the remit of this, but they will be addressed. So can you make sure that if you know some things that Matthew doesn't, and it looks like his one.
It's in the report.
Okay.
But can I just, I've got two more questions. One is, it's a project manager, we need to push this through. Who would do that?
Obviously, as part of the scope here from Blue Horizon, there is a suggestion that they will be able to follow every step through. They have the ability to support us along the way by doing that work for us. I wouldn't want to sit here in front of you and ask them to approve that now, when we don't know what capacity we've got in-house to do that. That wouldn't be a sensible use of money. It may be as this progresses that we look at it and go, actually, if we want to progress this as quickly as we would like to, let's invest some of that money into Blue Horizon to provide us with that support. It might be we get to a procurement stage where we procure the technical aspects, and within our amenities team, we have the ability to manage that install in-house. We'll take that approach as it comes and make sure we make those decisions right at the right point in time. It might be Blue Horizon do the entire process, and that might be brilliant and helpful for us. It might be other elements like recruitment of staff and things we do in-house. So there's still discussions, and I think that picture will become clearer as we move on.
Okay, and then my final question is just the other venues that are mentioned, which are some of small venues, are they meant to make money?
Coronation Inn Chapel, you're talking Chapel Hall and Coronation.
No. I think other theatres.
Oh, the other. Sorry.
I mean, the theatre industry is obviously known, renowned for kind of its money making and not making money, because theatre is a difficult space. What we have here, and this is again why Blue Horizon have suggested this, is it isn't a theatre in isolation trying to make money purely from a theatre operation. We have a whole building here that can be utilised. Therefore, where you would have a small theatre being managed by staff purely and solely based on those theatre spaces, we have other spaces to fill that we can utilise their time, so the resource isn't kind of all on that one basket, as it were. What I would say is, having a look at the financial structure in here, and this building, as I've stated in the report, the end of year figures suggest we subsidised for last year for about £67,000. This already shows that we're closer to break even by running this model, and this model is very high level and doesn't take necessarily into account all the other income elements that we have here. So I think what it shows from what Blue Horizon shows is it is profitable.
Right. Can I? I'll now take Mike,
Robert,
and then I'll take Robert. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll take Mike first, then Margid, then Robert. The floor is yours, Mike.
Chairman, thank you. I'm going to start by saying I'm disappointed that as a council we haven't been involved in the early stages of discussion. Okay, I used to manage the Algiva Theatre in Chesham. I was the town clerk at Chesham. I was responsible for the management of that venue, which was a 350-seat theatre. I have to say that I don't think a 100-seat theatre is viable. That's my first concern. I would have loved to have had a smaller subcommittee of councillors working with the consultants to really thrash out some of these issues, because I am actually concerned that the venue is too small. I'm also concerned that the business model that's been submitted makes no provision for pension costs. If members will be aware that any staff appointed by Woodley Town Council is automatically a member of the pension scheme. It makes no mention of that. I'm also concerned that the income generation here is shown at £70,000. What proportion of that is as a result of engaging artists? Because normally, if you hire a professional artist, then you will get a revenue split 80-20, 20% coming to the council, 80% going to the performer. And we don't know whether that £70,000 is shown in there or not.
Can I ask you to hold, because that's 3 points.
Yeah, I know.
I'm struggling to remember them all.
Just correct on that point specifically. The business model provided by Blue Horizon shows there are two ways of displaying income. One is a box office split, and one is a performance hire. So one is someone comes in and hires a venue, or we run an event where we get 100% profit. The other is a box office split. So it is what you'll see on page 96. It's all of the box office split productions are shown in tab 1, which is your net box office split. They are reflected then again on page 94 with the £23,000 income. The performance hire, which is the ones we do in-house, or community hires that are just flat fees, are shown in the second tab, and they're shown on 95. So that's 70,000 is performance hire. 23,000 is box office split, so that is shown in that document.
Can I just, before we move on, because I'm struggling to kick right, I would dispute your initial statement about small theatres don't work, because South Street is incredibly, and that's a 120-seater, I think, from memory. It's incredibly successful. They have identified the market they go into, which tends to be sort of what I call the fringe, you know, off Broadway. They know exactly what they're doing. They are a theatre. They've got no rooms, actually, although I must admit, they have a couple of rooms they rent out. They've just rented out to a Reading theatre company for offices, but they rely solely on the success of the box office. I mention them particularly because I may have got my times wrong, but something like 3 or 4 years ago, Reading Borough Council, who owns it, said they're going to shut it. There was a massive kickback from residents. They reviewed what they were doing, people in Southside, and decided and identified the real market they were going for and did it. And they are, I don't know if you've been there, but they are incredibly, incredibly successful. Reading Rep is another small one. I don't think they're as successful as South Street. Reading Rep is what historically was an Amdram company who managed to get a couple million to purchase the property. They work with the university, or the college was right next door. Apparently, they're very successful. I don't know personally, but I do know South Street. So it can be done. In terms of the business of pensions, etc., we're not talking about hiring people at the moment. And I understand that it's germane to the business model, but that's a subsequent phase. And that's when we need to look at all those things you raise. And I hope you'll be an active participant on that. Remember, the contract for Blue Horizon came to this committee, and this committee agreed it. Now, I'm not sure whether you were there or not. You might have been away or whatever, but it came here. I didn't know, for instance, that you were involved in that. I wish I had, because I would have asked Matthew to get you much more integrally involved. You've now declared that, and I'm sure, Matthew, you're going to talk.
Yeah, I think we emailed. I think we emailed all councillors in December, invited everyone to contact Blue Horizon if they wanted to discuss directly with them. And I know a few councillors. Darren definitely had a conversation.
Okay. I just wish there'd been a smaller subcommittee. We could have really thrashed this report out, so you wouldn't have me whinging about some of the things, because it's a very detailed report. I mean, and I spent a lot of time reading it. Cinematography. There's a mention in here that, well, I wasn't sure whether cinematography is or isn't in the business plan, because it seems to me that, Saturday.
Well, can we address those questions directly to the authors?
Cinematography, in or out?
In.
Provisions both in terms of technical capability and the programme for cinema, and that is commercial cinema, boutique cinema, but also live streaming, such as NT Live.
Yeah. So cinema is in. Okay, fine.
So remember, all of you, we have got the authors, and it's best those sorts of questions should be passed to them because it's their report, as opposed to us trying to interpret.
What I could also just say to maybe temper some of this is at the moment the commitment is being requested in this report is funding to take those next steps. If by the September meeting, when we hopefully will have a much more tight, realistic business plan and our funding for the project set up, if that business plan at that point makes you think this is not financially viable, you will not have committed any other additional money to it other than the research into it. So there will be another opportunity for you to, if you feel that it is not viable, and to be honest, from my point of view, if at that point when I've hashed out the real detail of it, my intention is to make it financially viable. If it is not financially viable, my recommendation would be not to proceed. At this point in time, based on the information I see and based on the information I know internally, can't see how utilising that space more than it is now would not make it more financially viable for us. And at the same time, because those technical upgrades are coming to be needed anyway, it would be a case of going, right, but in the next few years, we will either have to, if we don't do the technical, it won't be viable for any of our hirers, and we'll have to shut it as a theatre space and completely change it. So again, I'd just like to say, I want to make sure that at the point that you decide on funding, you have a clear business plan and you are absolutely confident that the spending is not a waste of public money.
Last point, Chairman, and I will leave it for others. What the last recommendation is asking us to approve in principle £132,000 for the technical upgrade. And I fully support that the venue at the moment can't be used unless there is significant injection of improvements in the technical upgrade. Yeah, I'm fully supporting that. But 132,000, you're not going to spend 132,000 and then say, oh, actually, it's no longer viable. We don't need the staffing to implement it. It's just chicken and egg situation. Surely we need to look at the whole thing in the round, don't we? We can't approve 132,000.
No,
without the staffing cost.
Can I just say that the in principle bit is the key there. So no decision will be made on spending that money until that business plan has come back and been reviewed. One of the things about the council indicating that commitment to spending that money, that opens some doors for us in terms of obtaining grant funding, where there's at least a commitment shown by the council that it's moving forward with the project, but it would come back before that decision is actually made as to how.
And we wouldn't want to proceed with this project. Now we've got those costs, which we didn't have until Blue Horizon. If we had the costs and you now sat around the table and said, no, we do not want to spend 132,000, then we need to know that now before we go down that path any further. So that's why that in principle is there, because it gives that indication.
Thank you.
Imagine.
I have one observation and one question. Observation is slightly related to what Mike has just said. I hope you have done your homework and assessment. When completion phase is over, we need some running expenditures to keep it functional. And as Mike has already indicated, it's not very big, it's small, 100 seat. So I hope you have done homework and assessment, how much income will be generated and how much will be running expenses to keep it functional. Will we be able to meet those running expenses, or we need any funding at that time? It's not a question, it's just observation.
Yeah, obviously, at a very high level, that is the information that Blue Horizon have provided in all of those financial costs from page 92 onwards on the agenda.
Okay, and my question is on page 12. It's written here, funded by UK government. Is it fully funded by UK government?
It is, yes, Woking Borough Council, and this was at the meeting where this was approved to move forward. Woking Borough Council adopted a shared prosperity funding to cover the cost of the consultation element. So that initial £5,525. So yes, they have provided that funding, and hence we have to provide that on the report because it's fully funded.
So it means the Woodley Town Council is not spending anything?
We didn't pay for that at all. It was all funded by shared prosperity funding, which was arranged from Woking Borough Council.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Oh, sorry. Can I? Robert.
Hello. Yes, sorry, I've woken up. We should have started at 4 o'clock, Keith, I think. Can I just say, I don't think we should employ any staff. I think Matthew should project manager this, and maybe some of his other responsibilities be supported by other members, because he has the knowledge and the driving force to see this through. yes, we should agree the 130 odd thousand pounds for this. This theatre is really important. I don't know if it's a declaration of interest, but my mother founded Woodley Light Operatic Society in 1968, and they used to meet in the Coronation Hall. And I can remember going to see productions. I can remember going to see her productions there. The other thing we need to do is we need to communicate this. I don't know if you saw it on Chats and Rants the other day, Keith, that wonderful Facebook group. Somebody was talking about £130,000 being spent. And I actually kept out of the argument because I wasn't sure of all the answers. And there was Viv Samuel, bless her, she came in with some of the answers from when the centre was built historically. So we do need to keep on the front foot to make sure we communicate this out to the general public, because council taxpayers, Woodley residents, will just see it as it's us just spending 130 grand on a theatre. Yeah, if you haven't seen National Theatre, subscribe to it. It is amazing. There's some really good productions you can see on that. I think that's it for my ramblings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Robert. Good observations, all noted. Juliet.
So can I just make a comment, really? This is a really huge community asset that we're not getting the most out of at the minute. You know, this needs to be for the residents of Woodley, and as Julian said, both young and old. You know, there is a huge part of the community that we could use this for. Now, I've been involved in theatre for a very long time, and actually, if we can gather people round us, you could staff that with volunteers, because I'll do it when I retire. I'm happy to volunteer there. You know, other theatres run like that. The Kenton does, Wokingham Theatre does. You know, it would not be beyond the wit of man to run this very cheaply once it's done, but we've got no chance of sweating this as a community asset at all unless we upgrade it. You know, we have this. I think it is viable for 100. I agree with the model. I think it's on the cusp, and I think we need to do more in-house stuff and hire in. But I think the sweet spot is somewhere between that 23 and 70. I would have thought more nearer 50. But the important thing for me is that we get near 100% occupancy. At the minute, we're running that at about 20-odd%, and that is not enough. That is a fabulous asset. I went to the Wokingham Theatre for the first time ever a couple of weeks ago. Apart from the fact that the stage is raised, it's no different to that, none at all. It's got a nice little area outside. We've got a cafe. You know, that's perfectly economically viable. We could do something very similar, but we can't do any of that until we get some decent lighting, decent tabs, and decent sound in there. So, you know, I'm fully supportive of this. I don't think we're making big decisions about big money right now. I think we're making decisions about 8 grand, and I think it's probably going to be 8 grand well spent.
Thank you. I would like to move on, if that's okay with everyone. I think we've had a real good thrashing out of everything. So can I take the 4 recommendations en bloc? Are we okay with that? Or do you want me to take each one individually? Right, okay. So item 1, the members note the contents of the report. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Item 2, the members approve that the council proceeds with the proposed refurbishment of the Alan Cornish Theatre, including the development of a new business plan and programme strategy in line with the recommendations set out in the report provided by Blue Horizon Ventures. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Abstention? Anne? Abstaining, thank you. You didn't put your hand up when I said abstention, so thank you. Item 3, that members approve the engagement of Blue Horizon Ventures to undertake stages 2, project preparation and approval, and 3, tender framework, technical and production update of the refurbishment project as set out in the report, with the cost £8,925 funded from the council's general reserve. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous, thank you. And the final point, that members approve in principle funding for the associated technical upgrades estimated at circa 132k, with the precise method of funding to be determined by this committee once final costs are known and funding methods assessed. All those in favour, please show. Abstention? No? Thank you. Right, thank you very much. It's a healthy debate. I appreciate it from. Yeah, can I say thank you to Julian and it's Lisa, isn't it? Lisa, for being here. I hope you found our discussion illuminating and interesting.
Very interesting.
You've probably heard it all before with other people, but thank you for coming and we'll see you at the next stage.
Will do. Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.
Guys,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
So here we go, back to the agenda. Item 6, finance, budgetary control, page 101, SR 925. Kevin?
Thank you. Excuse me. So just on expenditure, one of the things that might stand out a little there is relating to the town centre and why that percentage is low. I can just explain that's to do with some water rates and which is the £150, 149 expenditure, and the £500 unspent from the centre stage repairs budget, which is why that looks a little bit else we have to spend on that. Overall, that's 97% of the revised budget estimates in terms of income, with both the Oakwood Centre being higher than anticipated in the revised estimate. Sorry, on income, the CCLA income you'll see is over the original estimate, slightly under the revised estimate, but income around 97%, sorry, 92%, and the Oakwood Centre over the revised estimate. Questions?
Any questions? Can I just ask, Chairman, on the Oakwood Centre, I'm assuming, Kevin, that the democratic costs of council meetings, this meeting here, for example, the income from hiring this room is actually charged the Oakwood Centre.
Yeah, so it comes back.
It comes back. Okay, so but there's still this deficit. Is that then that's because
well, room hire, we made an underestimate on room hire in the revised estimate, but it's actually coming stronger than that. But yes, we recharge those so that there's no hit on the Oakwood Centre income.
Kevin, in light of the previous discussion, would it be helpful, I'm looking at councillors, because I'm going to make a suggestion, that I'm assuming the Oakwood Centre is a combination of the room hire and theatre hire.
It is, yeah.
Maybe it would be separate then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Particularly since we're going to be looking at the theatre
100%
financially.
Yeah.
You all agree?
That's right,
yeah. Absolutely agree.
Okay, thank you. Right. That was to receive payments, note, page 103. And
okay, it's another review on page 103 towards the bottom. PHS Group, sanitary hygiene, £5,312. What was that?
That's the annual contract cost for the hygiene services in our toilets, so the sanitary bins and things like that.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Oh, yes, so the cloud, so page 105, what's this, February, Cloudy Group Limited, £10,000, is that all to set up and train? Is that to set up the cloud system you've been setting up?
Partly, but it's the new finance system as well, which has been purchased, and there's a training element to that, which is ongoing as we speak.
So is the system all in place?
Yes, it's set up. It's not live yet. We have a test system set up, which we're familiarising ourselves with and getting used to before it goes live.
Oh, right, that'll be good. Okay. Oh, page 107, Mark. Towards the bottom, SMS Limited. Oakwood Centre for Theatre installation, £23,625. What's that?
Sorry, bear with me a moment, so I find it. Sorry, that's the replacement of the winches in the theatre, which was approved from the capital programme.
Okay. And, yeah, fine. Yes, finally, page 108, in the inspector's account, it says here, you paid £41,560 for community terrorism insurance.
Yeah, the narrative next to that's probably not terribly helpful. That's the insurance premium for all of the council's insurance for everything. So all our public liability, employers liability, motor, the whole works, terrorism is part of that.
It's very small.
It's not significant.
Yeah, the terrorists are coming on Mondays and Fridays. All councillors are welcome. Thank you.
It's been a similar amount for quite a long time, around about 40,000 for everything. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
The electricity for the electric clock, I presume that's the one in Woodley.
Yeah.
Have we done anything about that bill, because it's extremely high?
I will revisit it. It was initially standing charges.
Yes,
It was, yeah. It's the standing charges that have gone up quite extortionate. No,
It is,
quite a lot.
that's
Yeah,
extortion.
it's something like
Sorry.
10 times. It's ridiculous.
It is.
Yes.
They've just gone in line with other utilities, whereas before they were very relatively low, and the rate for daily charge, that's what's gone up, unfortunately.
Well, can we just not stop the clock anyway? I mean, to pay that sort of money for a clock is ridiculous.
Sacrilege.
Sacrilege.
Sorry, half the time it's stopped anyway.
So, just bringing it back to, is this account a separate account just for the electric clock?
Yes.
It is.
Why isn't it just
It's
part of this company?
EDF.
Right, no, but
Sorry.
so the town council has a contract for all these buildings. They don't have it for this building, for that building, for that building. They've got one. Is that correct?
That's right.
Well, why can't we, I don't know whether it would save anything because I know history.
We have investigated, and I think Kevin is.
They did a bit of work on the unmetered supplies for the town centre, which they came across separately because we took on at a different time.
Because they were part of working on Borough Council.
No, I understand the history.
Yeah.
but
It's
that
a different
was 10
company, Keith.
Yes.
It's a different company. You've got
why can't it be
Ecotricity and
the
then
same?
EDF.
Robert, what I'm saying is, why can't it be part of the town council's electricity contract? Because in essence, now that we rolled the TCMI into
Yes.
this, it should be.
I'll follow that up.
Please.
Back to the next meeting, so we've got.
Sorry.
Put a solar panel on it.
It's called.
Put a solar panel on top.
That's been suggested, just looking at it. Anyway, moving on.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
So,
Can I just ask a quick question about, sorry, Eventu, very near that EDF one, monthly projector hire, what projector?
So it's the large projector in the theatre. We owned one which broke some time ago, very, very expensive.
Oh.
We have it on hire arrangement because
Right.
it's used
And then it gets fixed if, so it's better, so in the grand scheme of things moving forward,
We'll have a new
buy it again.
Yeah,
Or hire it.
we'll have
We'll
it.
buy one, okay, thank you.
and will that be part of the theatre upgrade?
Yes.
It'll be the same cinema projector,
Yeah.
so it'll be a bigger scale
Yeah.
projector. And do
Good.
I thought that was.
Okay. Now move on.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, that was the note. Internal audit, page 109. I guess that's,
Yeah, if I can.
Very thorough, Chairman. Recommend we adopt it.
Yeah, we're very pleased with our internal auditor, who's providing very clear reports with clear recommendations. Just to note their recommendations for the second interim audit, which carried on 4th of March. There's a couple of things there relating to some unpaid invoices regarding the Oakwood Centre, which has been followed up on. and a procedure put in place going forward for monthly checking and actioning. And there was also an issue with being able to verify the kind of audit trail on a couple of staff salary issues. So that's been reviewed, and that system put in place in terms of the new HR system. What we tend to do with this, which you can see on the previous interim audit, is we post those actions on there so that it's clearly in the report. So now that those have been actioned, they'll be updated on there as well, and the internal auditor then checks those when he comes back.
Questions?
Yes, page 110, second interim audit. It's just a general thing. So obviously Ash is retiring and you're checking on the new finance system. How are you sort of managing the handover of skills, or not getting confused by?
Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of work between myself, Matthew, and Ash in picking up some of those elements. Also in tandem with learning the new finance system. So we've been spending a lot of time on that. I'm really pleased to say our new finance manager will be starting with us on Monday next week.
Right.
So we have a 5-week handover period with the new RFO with Ash before he sadly leaves us. So yeah.
Sounds good.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
So how, sorry, on page 114, how is the fixed asset register getting on? Has it been completed?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, we did quite a lot of work going through the asset register. There are a number of items on the old one which were historic and a bit vague and not particularly helpful. And we've taken some advice and had quite a lot of conversation with the internal auditor about that. So we built a new one essentially. We'll be using going forwards.
Okay, thank you. So I did wonder, you pay lots of, I'm not sure if I've got the right place in the audit. You have paid lots of deposits back to people after they've hired venues. Do you know what proportion of deposits you don't pay back, and does that happen? Is the damage, and do you end up not paying deposits back from?
That does happen, yes.
It does happen.
Yeah.
What sort of proportion of times?
It's not that usual. We have had some more recently where we've had to do that, and we've taken a reasonable and demonstrable amount out of that for say so many hours cleaning, or someone's overrun by a specific amount of time. But it does happen.
So you do an inspection before you hand back the deposit number?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Any other questions? I've got one very quickly. On 117, the very first matter arising, because I've got a personal interest in this, saying the council is dependent on 2 councillors. Payment authorisations now being split between signatories. How many potential signatories are there now?
There are 4.
There's 4.
Yourself, David Bragg, Mike Kennedy,
and Alison Swaddle.
and I do try and rotate.
And the new people, I think they probably need a 6-month experience. So they can be the 2 for 6 months. Which means I don't have to. No. Thank you. I think it's very good. The internal auditor, I think, Mike, you're spot on. All the reports we've had over the years are really good, very easy to understand if you're not an accountant. The response from the officers has always been first class, and put things in.
Just maybe another thing. Has the Oakwood Centre gained a connection to the financial systems at the leisure centre?
Not yet.
Oh, blimey.
Cloudy IT are having a slight difficulty in connecting the 2 together.
So how long has that been going on for?
Since it was raised.
Yeah, it's been a while actually.
Yeah.
I did have access to it originally before we went with Cloudy IT, but for some reason they are finding it hard to connect the 2 together.
They are two separate systems. They're two separate instances. All it is it's an enabled connection so that Ash, when he's working here, can access the data of the legislature. So instead of that, you still get the data from the system. It's just that sitting at.
I can't do it independently to check it, make sure that everything is going.
So how do you do it then? Do you go over there?
No, I email and correspond and talk to them over the phone.
So is that an audit trail sort of thing? Have you got a sort of audit trail of that, or perhaps you're not going to do it?
Well, no, it's mainly our internal auditor would like and somebody else to be able to keep an eye on what the bookings going on.
Well, yes, that's right.
The new finance system we've got, part and parcel of that is a booking
Which will
system
be able to
as well.
do that,
So
yes.
the intention is by next April that everyone will have moved across to the new finance system and the new booking system, and so it will be all one cloud-based integrated system. So everything will talk to each other. So that we're on the path to getting that solved anyway.
So it could be another year. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. As we're moving on, the time is getting on, and we're only on 6D, and we've got 17 or so. So if we can keep our comments brief and relevant. Item D, the CCLA PSDF funds, page 122. Comments for you as well, Ash. Keep it
Yes,
brief.
well, as you can see, we had to move funds from the CCLA to cover two loans that came for maturity, which was the 275 plus 500,000. So, but the interest element, the income that we're getting is very good still so far. Questions?
Nope. Okay. Next, the loans, page 123. Is that Ash or is it you or?
Yeah, it's just there for information, as we actually have the statement. We
Don't
may
have
as well actually provide that. So those are the outstanding public works loans board
But
balances.
you're not saying the end date. You've got repayment date, 31st of March to 30th of September.
Yeah, that's the statement actually. Yeah, what is missing from there is the table with those end dates on.
Yeah,
You can circulate.
the main one, which is 1.225, will be March 26.
Suggests that, it's useful information.
Yes,
But what's also useful is when it's going to be repaid,
yes.
please. Okay?
Well, it is in the CCLA where the loan is coming out. That
Yeah, but that's that one, but
that's
all
separate.
these,
Sorry,
some
yes,
of these
I
are
agree. Yes,
50 years or something, and they're paid off in 21, 25 or something.
quite a few of them. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions? No? Still, this is just a note. Nice to, have we actually got it? It's April?
Yes, it came in yesterday.
Okay, so that's good. That figure is always going to be quite low because there is not much building work in Woodley Town, is it? Or Woodley? There's no space.
With that majority of the still money.
Probably worth noting as well that that's about 4,000 more than we had expected and budgeted for. So that just as a start, a bit more money.
Good. Item 7, Open Centre income update. Is this you?
Yeah, so just note room hire to March 2025 was 104,662 against the budget target of 73,000. So that was underestimated in the revised estimates. Catering income shown on the chart on page 125 shows income at 7,521 against the revised estimate of 6,127. Was the wording in there refers to the original estimate, which is particularly helpful. That should refer to the revised estimate since the changeover in catering operator.
Okay, so you're saying in March, where it says budget 15,750, that's not the revised budget.
No, so
could you reissue that table then?
Yeah,
please?
so the revised estimate was 6,127.
So if you just reissue that.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions, comments? No? Right, thank you very much for your cooperation on this. Woodley Town Centre Partnership, page 126. We're receiving the report there. Hopefully no questions or comments. Good. Right. Capital projects budget, 129. Is that you, Ken?
Yes, so just to note, some of the completed projects on there, including the Theatre Winch project we mentioned earlier on, kitchen over at Coronation Hall, and obviously the new orchard garden, which is complete and was opened last week.
Okay. The top two items, Coronation Hall kitchen, Chapel Hall kitchen, one says complete and the other says awaiting amenities to.
Sorry, yes, that should have been removed.
So the comment should be deleted, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So Chapel Hall kitchen, you're saying completion January 2025. That was a few months ago.
Yes, that hasn't been updated. Apologies. So that is scheduled, but hasn't happened due to team availability and a window of opportunity.
So just that date is wrong.
Yeah.
When is the expected?
I will need to update you on that. I'm not sure if we've got a date for it.
Okay, could you reissue a correct?
Yeah.
Doc, thank you. Community grants, page 130. Consider the guidelines, consider the report 1025. Who's that to?
Yes, so as always, I've provided this is the first round of community grants for this year. The budget for this year is £3,000. We have 4 community grant applications and 2 individual grant applications. Anyone have any questions on on those that are in there?
Find them all acceptable? Can we take them on? Yep. Okay, can I just do it formally? All those in favour, please show. All those against? Abstention? No. Thank you very much. Could we, Matthew, since we're beginning to get a handle on press releases, etc. There's what, 4 organisations, clearly the individuals you can't do because of GDPR, but there's 4 organisations. We could drip feed, get them handing of the cheque or whatever, or press releases, Let's start banging the drum because we do a hell of a lot of good work. Well, yeah, but I'm saying a press release.
Yeah.
On each of them.
Yeah.
Let's raise the profile of what we do collectively. And that is a great piece of work that we do all the time. Youth service strategy, page 135. Who's taking this?
I can take this. So this is coming from Leisure Services who've considered the updated youth service strategy. As you might remember, we adopted the youth service strategy back in 2022 to run from 22 to 27 based on the high level work that's leading up to that. Based on that previous strategy, we were unable to tender and the Leisure Service Committee set up a working group to completely review youth services again. That work finished towards the end of last year and a new set of principles was agreed by Leisure Services. This strategy has been updated to reflect that. We've stripped it back so that it just focuses primarily on what we're going to try and achieve through the youth service strategy. And so Leisure Services have approved this and obviously recommend that the Strategy and Resources Committee approve it with a recommendation to go to full council as a council strategy to approve at the next annual meeting.
Any questions? I have one comment. Page 138, location 17. Just a bit of, I think it's loose. The council will fund services which takes place within the Woodley town. We're not, that's an open-ended checkbook. I know that's not what it's meant. Do you know what I mean? It has to, somehow you need to put a caveat within the, whatever. Because the strategy, according to that sentence, if somebody wants, collectively adding it all together, it's £1 million. This says, the strategy says we'll pay it.
The intention is to basically say that it'll only
Will only
fund services
yeah.
that take place within Woodley.
Okay.
It doesn't mean all services.
Yeah, but that's not what it- that's not what it's-
Would only.
Yeah, that would be, it's just to be absolutely precise, because remember, these strategies quite often we won't be here in a few years' time potentially, so other people have to take them on, so we need to be as tight as possible to avoid confusion, okay? I'm sure legislators will mind that. Right, item, oh, yes,
Full council.
right, all those in favour, please show.
Right, that's all.
Thank you. Item 12, Community Hall and Leisure Centre deposit. Page 140. Guess that's you, is it?
Yeah, so that's the report there that went to the Leisure Services Committee. Basically, it was tidying up exercise in relation to deposits which have been charged for a number of years on for Hall Hire, which we talked briefly about earlier on. What the report aimed to do was regularise the charges that are charged at Woodford Park Leisure Centre with those of the community halls, and that's essentially that this committee approves the charging of those deposits, which haven't actually happened previously.
Any questions? Straightforward? Okay, so we got two recommendations. I think the second one probably is a little bit miswritten, because it says the members consider the deposit rates as set out in the report and make a recommendation to the Strategy and Resources Committee. Well, we are the Strategy. And
Yeah, so that's the report from the Leisure
Yes,
Services
okay.
Committee.
I thought that was the case.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is ratifying.
Yeah.
Can you, again, just for the minutes?
Can I ask, what were the deposits before?
We haven't changed the rate. It's the £200 and £75. It's been the same for some time. That seems to work. Yeah.
So based on the change, so we're ratifying the Leisure Services Committee recommendations. Can I take the two together? All those in favour, please show. Unanimous, thank you very much. Climate Emergency Action Plan update, we're getting there. 13, page 141. One of you?
I'll take that one, thank you. Yes, so you'll remember that around about like April last year, this committee approved the undertaking of a carbon footprint assessment for the council's activities. The intention was to give us some fixed figures that we can actually utilise when lowering our carbon footprint to meet our climate declaration, which in 2019 the full council agreed to aim to reach carbon neutral status by 2030. Hopefully you've read the report, obviously, but the key assessment is we generate 205 tonnes of location-based CO2, which is 151.7 tonnes of market-based. Just to clarify what the difference between location and market-based is, location is essentially based on the fuel we use here and how much energy it takes to create the fuel that comes to this building. Market-based is based on the fact that we have chosen a low energy tariff, a carbon neutral tariff. Obviously, it doesn't change the physical fuel that comes into this building, which is why the location-based is. Market-based tries to reflect the decisions that we do take into it. So it's that figure that is the real key figure. On page 142, what you'll see is we, as part of our carbon footprint assessment, that data and that report is live on a website where all organisations that have undertaken these can publish it. There are only 3 other town councils that have published on there, so the data isn't particularly wide, so it's difficult to benchmark. But what I think is really positive for what we've done is you can see there that based on scopes 1 and 2, our per employee and our per £1 million turnover CO2 is quite low compared to the other town councils, which shows, again, it reflects the decisions we've made, reflects the solar panels we've put in, reflects all the work we've done to kind of reduce our footprint already since 2019. So we're in a decent position, but we still have essentially 151 tonnes of CO2, most of that related to our supply chain, which is our purchases. That we need to get a grip of to try and lower. The report itself provides steps. Carbon Footprint Limited, which is a company that undertook us for us, are working with us on providing some targets, but they've also suggested a number of steps for improving. One is improving our data accuracy, so that's starting to record data based on not just the spend, but the actual products. working with those suppliers to work out what their environmental policies are around procurement and supply themselves, so we understand that the suppliers we're choosing are low carbon, supporting sustainable travel here. And the final one is about carbon neutrality. Carbon neutral is the process of offsetting any carbon you release into the atmosphere. So in theory, if we paid now, we could pay, there's some figures in there, up to £2,500 to offset that 151 tonnes, and we would be able to go highway carbon neutral. Not really the purpose of carbon neutrality. Obviously, the purpose is that you do everything you can to lower your footprint and then offset, and there's still more work for us to do. The council has also, just to reiterate, targeted to do that by 2030. So whilst the council could take the decision to send that money now, that's not necessarily part of this recommendation. The recommendation is that we follow through with the target setting and update our climate action plan in line with the targets that we get. So that's a summary of the report, and as I say, at the moment there are no other recommendations other than to know the report while we work on updating the climate action plan to present at a later meeting with some more recommendations.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, this. Just page 158.6.1.2, it's saying aiming at a 50% reduction in emissions per £1,000 turnover. What's the baseline? I mean, 50% reduction compared to what?
It's actually one of the most difficult things is, and we've discussed this with carbon footprint, there is an intention to reduce your footprint. Because we haven't done it, we didn't do an assessment in 2019, we didn't have a base point for us. This actually is our first carbon footprint assessment, is our base point. We are working with carbon footprint to see if there is a way of identifying data from 2019 to be able to get a base point. Because, as I say, we've actually already made massive steps to reduce, so it's not a clear baseline for us. But I'm not sure how much we can do. We can get data on our electricity tariffs and spend at that time, which will give a view. But it's the data that goes behind this is quite extensive. It takes a long time, so we have to judge the resource and the benefit of that. But these are kind of targets for setting it for net zero. And net zero is different to carbon neutral. Carbon neutral is offsetting. Net zero is saying that you do not, you put anything you take out, you actually put back through your activities. And it suggests that 90% reduction is that worldwide target. If you've reduced everything by 90% from your base point, then essentially that last 10% you can ignore and offset, and that still counts as net zero. But this council's only committed to becoming carbon neutral at the moment.
So the 90% reduction thing, do you think you might end up reducing that by 90% from now? Because now is something you do know, you have measured it. You said something rather than 2019.
That's what carbon footprint will help us to work on in terms of targets. So what they're able to do is set some realistic targets along these lines to try and understand the steps we need to take over a number of years, not just next year what we do, but by 2030 we need to be at a position where we have electric charging points for staff, and by 2035 we need all of our vehicles in the parks to be electric. All of those sorts of targets, so that by that sort of 2040 we realistically can hit a 9% reduction. That is still going to be a target for us because we have to, we have to do everything we can to get it down as low as possible. And it may be we can get it down lower than that. I think that's still going to be the target.
I think that actual figure, that tonnage figure, is kind of the key one, because there'll probably be a point where we get to where we've got that choice to make about offsetting that last bit that we can't physically stop doing, but it's slightly skewed on the percentages because we did a lot of work before we started measuring.
Oh yes, that's true. Yeah.
With the solar panels, for example, which took a massive amount out of it, then moved to green energy suppliers, which was the bulk of our carbon footprint before we started measuring.
Yes, right. So if you had that side of the 2019,
the percentage would be higher.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, that's to note. No more questions. Now let's get into another beefy one. Future budgeting process. Page 162, but also you've got an update modified chart that's Matthew's given to you. Just before I hand it over to Matthew, I just wanted to say what we're planning to do here and trying to do here is actually a first for any council, town or Wokingham borough. It doesn't happen in those in Early or Wokingham. Doesn't happen in the borough. This sort of level of consultation and resident engagement. And I'm very pleased because yet again, Woodley Town Council is being a pioneer, trying to engaging residents, etc. So, having set the scene, over to you, Matthew.
Okay, I'll do a brief summary and then I'll also explain, as hopefully you've all seen in RTF, there is an updated process and I'll, not massively different, but I will explain it in a moment. So as most of you will be aware, at the moment our budget setting process is a case of officers going through those budgets in around about October, November and December time, revising current year budgets and forecasting future year budgets. Those tend to get finalised internally around about the end of December into January, and then our committees in January we present the budget position for the next year. Now, we have a duty to provide Woking Borough Council as our principal authority with the precept amount by the end of February, and therefore, at that meeting in January, if councillors wanted to raise questions or not approve those budgets, it would make it very difficult for us as officers to then get any changes through or to revise them further, to be able to get full council to approve it. That hasn't happened historically, and obviously officers work very hard to create the decent budgets, but it doesn't give councillors much time to feed in. As Keith said, we also don't currently seek residents' views on the level of precept and also on council high-level priorities. So we're not saying, are you happy for us to spend money on a building that we physically have to spend or staff costs, but some of the priorities that come up regularly, you know, we have our youth services, we have the theatre, there's lots of options in terms of where those priorities of some of that additional spend goes that we don't necessarily seek residents' views on, and residents might say, we want you to spend on everything because we're happy with the increase, or might want you to focus your energy on these things, playground equipment, whatever that might be. The intention of rewriting this process here is to get an opportunity for residents' consultation engagement, fairly high level, try and understand priorities and try to understand their interest in what level of precept they would support for the type of services we can offer. Have a earlier engagement with councillors where you can review those original initial budgets more fully and actually make some meaningful impact on them before we end up in January. That's what this report proposes. The updated process, following a conversation with Keith this morning, we've recognised that actually the key to this is resident consultation, and the importance is resident consultation first. And it's important to get residents' views first before kind of coming to council. So we've slightly adjusted this so that instead of kind of having an informal meeting with everyone, which may or may not provide us with anything tangible anyway at that point in time, we'll focus in the early part of the summer of getting a residents' consultation together. We will run that for 6 weeks during August into September. Whilst it's not ideal always to run consultation during the summer, the time periods mean that it's going to be necessary, and we feel it's more beneficial to finish it outside of the summer than to finish it in the middle of the summer. So we're suggesting starting it in the summer. We have a couple of community events in the summer that we can use to promote it, and at the beginning of September, when everyone's back to work, we can do a lot of kind of mail shots and work on that. And then following that, what we would suggest is providing the response for that consultation to all councillors towards the end of September, and also seek every single councillor's view on that, and a view on what you think your priorities are and what you think we should be doing. That then feeds into a budgetary setting process in October, with a presentation of very provisional budgets in November for you to feed into. We can then make any changes we need to in December, and you can get final budgets that hopefully, because we've had all that feedback in there, they will be much more robust at that point in January, but then it is much better for you to rubber stamp them and get them through to full council. So that's the intention of the process. We've said in here, obviously, the context of this first year, we've got a new finance manager coming on next week. We're changing finance system, which was desperately important to be able to get better information for everyone and provide us with better resource internally. So it will be a learning curve. We're not suggesting this process will be perfect and it will be tweaked year on year to make it better. But as a first step this year, we believe this is workable, we can manage it within our resources and will provide hopefully a much clearer way forward.
Can I just say, by the way, on the consultation phase, August to September, there is a list of things there. That's not exclusive. That's just a range of things. Like I was talking to Kevin and Matthew, we're probably going to provide the capability of reply paid, because we all know that that increases the response rate dramatically. It's a cost, but it's better to spend the money and get the residents' views or more residents' views than not. So it's over to the committee. If you want any questions. Yeah, I'm doing the committee first.
So can I just ask, can we do this online as well? So there'll be a facility for people to do it online.
The intention will be that it will be an online survey, but we can feed data in manually to those surveys through SurveyMonkey. So that the mail shop may, and again, we haven't finalised it, but we'll hopefully have a QR code for the ability to do it online, but also the paid response on there so people can tick the box and fill it in and return it to us as well. So we cover, because we want that community engagement to be as wide as possible.
And we'll be able to do paper-based ones on site.
Yes,
yeah, obviously.
Yeah,
very good. So in terms of, you're going to send out a blank bit of paper saying, what do you want us to spend our money on? Or are you going to put some ideas? Because often you'll get a better response with a straw man.
We know through committee what a lot of our priorities are.
Right. So you'll put
we already have that. There are still some options and we need to discuss that internally about some things, one of the things that gets raised regularly is Wokingham Town Council spend £100,000 a year on events, and we spend nowhere near that much. We spend near £4,000 or £5,000. And it'd be interesting, I think, for those sorts of consultations to get some feedback on what residents would see as those priorities. We don't want to be saying, do you want to support funding of the leisure centre when we know the leisure centre needs work, and committees have already moved down that process, the same with the theatres. So we're going to try and make it much more high level about what is important to residents and use that to feed where some of that extra money goes.
Thank you.
What's critical, just following up, is that it must not be a 25-page document with 55 questions and the answers, unlike the way WBC does it, some of the obvious answers aren't there. So it's the classic design of, I know I've done it myself as a former professional in marketing. You can design a survey basically to get the answers you want. That must not happen. I've said to, my view would be no more than 6 sections maximum. You can do it less. It's better, less is more, Sorry, Anne.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that I'm sure Rob would confirm that people on the Facebook Woodley groups, they're very, very confused about which council does what and what the town, Woodley Town Centre Management does and so on. So in all communications to the public, it would be good to sort of state, we cover these areas, but we don't cover those areas, sort of thing, because otherwise you'll get them telling us what Woking Borough Council should do.
Yeah, we picked that up actually. We do have, there is a leaflet on what we do, not a physical leaflet, but it's been designed. I think that's gone up on one of the information pillars, or going up on one of the information pillars in the town, and we're intending to use the carnival stall for us as well as a way of promoting that. And because you're right, we get it quite a lot of the time, and although the website explains it, a lot of people don't necessarily engage or look there for it. So the more we can improve our community engagement, the more we get out what we involve. And I think the survey is a way of doing that through that mail shop, saying these are the things we look after and we have control over, and we would like your feedback. So I think it's a real key opportunity for us to get information across to people.
But you've got to be extremely careful not to divert the purpose of the consultation. The purpose of the consultation isn't to clarify that question. It's a question that everybody asks. You're absolutely spot on. And I can tell you, you can have all the communications in the world and there will always be people who don't understand it. That's always going to happen. I would just caution that you don't put too much in there so that the recipient of the consultation ends up by spending all their time worrying about who does what, as opposed to what do you think is a good precept, etc. Folks, can I come to Robert first, and then I was going to come to you, June. Okay.
Thanks, Keith.
Robert
Thanks,
first,
Keith.
then Majid.
Thanks, Keith. I don't want to be too negative, but I always think it's quite sometimes dangerous. We are elected members to represent our constituents. I think something happened in 2016 when we asked the general populace what we should do. Oh yes, Europe, that was it. So you have to be quite careful on what you ask people. I've just checked YouTube. There's 4 people watching this. I don't think the general population of Woodley really are that interested in how their money is spent. Dear resident, do you want to pay council tax? No. You know, that's going to be the answer. If you then break it down into how you want your council tax to be spent, I really don't think they're going to care that much. So I say it might be a bit negative, but I just think that's how it's, you know, that's how it's going to be. And if you've got on this form, you've got here, you know, £1,000 to send out postal a questionnaire. I think it's a non-starter. Sorry to be so negative.
So I will come back, and then I'll come to Majid and then June. We've actually got an example of how successful that can be, what is being proposed. Back when COVID first hit, we had to shut down everything. And it meant that our income stream was decimated for an unknown period. And we were coming up to set the precept. And we did a wide range consultation. It was a single card, reply paid. And I think from memory, it was over 1,000 people. It was a huge number. And all we did was we explained in about 3 sentences the financial situation that we were going to be in, right, because of the loss of income. And what we said was, we can therefore increase it by, from, I'm just using random figures, 2, 5, 10. And that was extremely helpful, because guess what? Actually, what we did, I think it was 6%, but we put a promise that if the financial outturn, because of the unknown, when it becomes known, was satisfactory, we would reduce. Now, I'm just saying, and we did. So it can work. You're absolutely right. You've got to be very careful on what the questions are, how they're phrased. The last thing you ever do is do a sort of closed question which says, do you want to pay council tax? Yes or no? If anybody does that, they need to be shot.
Can I just add something, Chair? Just to add that I think will definitely be an element of review as we do this. It's the first time we've moved into this process. It will look different next year. I think we'll have learned things and done things differently. But we've got an opportunity to harvest some resident views, and I think we've got the means to do it now, which we hadn't had previously with electronic surveys and things like that. So I think we'll learn a bit by doing that.
And I'll just add another example. Sorry, Majid, but thank you for your patience. When I was leader of the Borough Council, I and the officers put together a series of effectively residents meeting all the directors. All the directors were there. They had little stalls for their area to explain what they were doing. And I tell you, we had hundreds of people turning up. So I think it's not as bad as you suggest in terms of people's interest. It's not enough. It's not as much as it should be, but it is there and we need to tap it in. I'm going to go to Majid. He's been very patient. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Cheers.
I have few questions. First question is that how we are going to contact residents and their opinions. And I have understood is that it will be surveyed.
We'll cover as many bases as we can. So we have the ability to do kind of posters on notice boards, we can do banners, we will do social media information, we'll do press releases, and we will do a direct mail shot to every address like we do with the Herald to make sure that every single address gets that as well. That's probably as much as we can do in terms of actually contacting people. And one of the questions, if someone applies online, is to say where they saw us advertise, a very brief question on that, which will help us get some feedback. Because again, one of the things we'll need to do, I know we'll discuss it a bit later on, is we need to work on making sure that we know how people engage with us and how they want to engage with us, so that we're not throwing banners up that get no responses. So it's a good opportunity for us to kind of find out how people hear from us.
So you have mentioned various sources from social media to posters, etc. Then who will collect and organize that information?
We will do it as officers. Yeah, one of the good things is obviously that we use SurveyMonkey, and obviously as the data is entered into it, it has a vast range of sort of data that it provides in the back end reporting that you'll have seen that in some of the other reports we've provided. So it does a lot of that analysis work for us. We've also got new AI tools on hand that actually can take massive amounts of data and extrapolate and provide really useful information in it. So we've got lots of tools in-house to do it, but the officers will do that work and then report back.
Suppose there is a question about something and there is opinion, for example, 200, 250 or 300, and majority of them, they express their opinion. Are we going to ignore that? Are we going to respect that opinion, and that will be implemented as well?
I think the purpose is we will advise you all of what those consultation responses are and what residents seem to indicate that their priorities are. That will feed into our budget setting, but obviously you as councillors are ultimately the ones that will make the decision as to whether to do that or not. And you will have different views, and you will also have other things to balance, because it might be that we have something emergency comes up in this year, sort of, or even extreme, but say Coronation Hall, one of the walls cracked and sort of fell down. We'd be like, okay, actually, we need to spend money there, so we don't have as much money. So you're going to have to balance that. But the point at the moment is it's a really good opportunity to find out what residents feel priorities should be, and that we, wherever possible, try and kind of feed that into our thinking as well. But that'll be up to council.
We'll circulate all of those responses to all members.
And just to picking up Robert's point, we've been elected, and part of that election is to take responsibility. The data we're talking about here is to shape your views, and there will be majority views that won't get through this committee or full council. That's a given, and it won't be because we don't like the idea. It's because you've got to look at it on the whole. And if you can't do everything every once now, a bit like Robert's question about, do you pay council tax, yes or no? We have to make that decision. We have to make that trade-off of what I think is collectively the right thing.
So this process will give us the ability to triangulate that, won't it? With funds available, what the residents are saying and what we believe. So, but it will add value, whether this is the right process this year, whether it needs tweaking next year. It's a really good start.
And we go to full council in September.
And the intention will be actually that you will get an email as soon as we've analysed the data. So you will all get that full of the data, and it will also offer you the opportunity, whether that's through a formal survey or simply just reply via email. We'll give you all then the opportunity to feedback what your views on that response are. Might be you've got your own priorities that you think need to be fed into it, all of that stuff, and then obviously us as officers have to juggle that within the budget through October to kind of see what can be achieved, what can't be achieved. So it might be that we end up presenting some options in November, but that's
so what's critical. All of you who are on any of the variety of committees, standing committees, actually participate fully, because so what you'll get effectively is the collective data, the data points, etc. You'll get these guys' view in terms of a forecast, which will primarily be what I classify business as usual, the costs, etc., with some provision for future things. And at that committee room meeting, you know, like leisure services, that's when you collectively, right, pull it together and debate it, discuss it, and go to vote, which will go forward. So it is absolutely vital that everybody attends the committees that there are. Sorry, June. Your turn.
Just a few things. You know, echo your point about the need to consult, and the latest version of the Good Counselling Guide hammers that all the way through, that we need to be talking to people. So obviously, at some point, we come here and make a judgment based on all those inputs. But one of those inputs, and one perhaps that we've sort of neglected, is actually trying to engage more with people. Just addressing Rob's point about people's engagement, I think actually the engagement with Woodley Town Council is on service and job report is very good compared with, say, Wokingham. Now, Wokingham, I mean, very good about always pushing out things for us to, to consult on. And I did one of their consultations last year. It was a really well designed survey, and it was all about how safe you feel in your community, and all open questions. And it's very good. It's got to the end of it. I thought, well, that's totally good. Go back and look at last year's. Over the whole borough, 81 people have responded. I hope they're not making any policy decisions on the back of this. And I think 25 of them were from Woodley. So it's that's just sort of top of my head, but it's that sort of number. Now, if we're getting 1,000 people responding, that's pretty good, so I don't want to beat ourselves up too much on that. I take Keith's point about not overloading any survey we send out with, oh, this is all the stuff we do. What I would say is we have a very good resource in our website. There's loads of good stuff in there, and we can very easily just put links on. We want to know more about this thing. So all we have to do is just go and have a look at those. I think where we've got a gap, and I can sort of vouch for this because I'm just groping my way through about how council finances work, is just explain to people at a high level what we do, or how we fund things. So, if we're saying we're going to spend 130 grand on the theatre, that doesn't mean that we just divide that up, that 130 grand, and that goes on the precinct next year. So I think we need to perhaps give people just at a high level, like you at home, some of the stuff we spend out of our income as we go, some of the things we borrow money for, and we borrow money from, wherever it is we borrow money from, and this is how we pay it back, and that's what, because as I say, if you talk about, especially these big sums of money, it looks a bit scary if you think it's going to, you're going to have to pay for that in a year, as it were, when that's obviously not how we work, we do so. And so perhaps if we can give some consideration to just a page on the website explaining roughly how that works. And I think the other sort of thing to put in context is that our budget, quite a lot of it writes itself. So as you say, we've got this lovely building, and we have maintenance costs like you do at home, and similarly with the sports centre, we have maintenance costs, and you don't not maintain your buildings so that you can go and do something whizzy somewhere else. So actually, what we're talking to people about is this optional area, if you like, So I think that if you put it in context, that helps people making decisions. And I think something that popped up tonight, when we look at the theatre, or you were talking about the theatre, the takeaway I had from the discussion there is actually there is a cost to us in not doing that. And I think you also have to make that explicit as well to people. So it's not like we're going to spend this money on the theatre and it's all kind of extra stuff we're spending. Actually, if we don't spend it, we've got an asset there that we're not exploiting, and that actually is a cost. So it's all, finance is complicated. I'm trying not to get too involved with it indoors, but I think we can express things in a way that make it so people can make a sensible judgment, and they've got, if they want the information, we can ping them. I'm really excited about this as an idea.
Thank you very much, June. That's a very good contribution, so thank you. I'm sure you've got it all.
Yeah, brilliant.
And can I say, any of you, no, please, if things crop up, this is a starting point, it's not the end point. And this will be a living process. And in maybe 3 years' time, it'll be fundamentally different than this. But this is the starting point. Final comment, and then I'm going to go to the vote, is, you are interesting the stats you're talking about with the engagement platform WBC. As I said, as a former chartered marketing professional, to me, WBC does everything in their power to make it very, very difficult. Like you've got to have an account, etc., which disenfranchises so many people. We don't. When we did that 1100, we went over the board. We went overboard to encourage people, because that's what it's all about. All right. So thank you for all your comments. I'm going to go work out where the recommendation is. 162, isn't it? Here we go. No, 164. Thank you very much. Yeah, with the new process. Okay, so can I take them together? Members note the content of the report, and the members approve the budget setting process as per the new chart and timeline set in the report as modified. All those in favour, please show.
Everyone.
Right, thank you very much. So we've got 10 minutes to do. So we're nearly there. Item 15, town centre water bottle filling station.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. This is a request for the purchase cost of that unit to come from the earmarked reserve that we currently have for the town centre garden. It's very much linked to the garden, and the feed comes straight from the water installation that was installed last year for the garden. Appropriately, it would come from that earmarked reserve.
Can I go straight to the vote on this, please? All right, all those in favour? Thank you.
Everyone, thank you.
We've got two more meaty ones. Oakwood Centre frontage. Which one of you two guys are taking that?
Yes, I can take that if you like. So obviously the front of the Oakwood Centre has the hard standing area, which at the moment seats 9 tables and 20 seats. It is a bit tired as an area. It's not particularly, I mean, it is well used by people that come and sit out there. It's a very popular area. We tried to spruce it up a little bit by starting last year to create a bit more of space and purpose to it by adding planters and signage. However, we need to do more with that space. Anytime there's any bad weather, it's cold, it's wet, it's damp, that isn't a usable space. Obviously two things. Moving forward with theatre, we're going to need to provide as much space as we possibly can for people who are coming out during intervals and at the beginning of shows. And the inside space within there is fine, but it'll be cramped for 100 people. Works now, but it is a bit cramped. Secondly, the cafe provision, as you'll have seen, they have a cocktail menu, and they're looking to start providing that on Fridays and Saturday evenings. And in the long term, they would like to provide that more often. And to make best use of that, obviously in the summer on a lovely hot sunny day, people can sit outside and have cocktails kind of 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. But as soon as it gets darker and colder, it won't be possible. So to get the most use out of that, to have an area of outdoor seating which retains that outdoor feeling, whilst also providing coverage so that you feel like an extra room. We wanted to create something. So our amenities manager's gone away and looked at several options. One option that's not covered in here is a full extension. That would be probably too much and would be far too costly. Cost at the moment is about £2,500 per square metre. So you're talking about sort of maybe £200,000 for an extension. The amenities manager has looked at several options of verandas and pergolas. There is a difference apparently. Can't explain it. One's attached to the other, one's not. This is a pergola. The option that we've settled on as we think is the best option is the option shown in the report. The best images are sort of on page 167. You'll see that there is a selective style roof which automatically can be changed. change angle and position, so it can be fully waterproof when closed. It's the claim of the company. We believe that to be true. With water feeding down the leg gullies, when it's nice, you can open that up. Because it can move at any angle, it means as the sun goes over, you can change that as you see fit. The proposed cost that's coming from that company, we will obviously have to go out to tender, but also includes 8 heaters, which will provide enough coverage in that area. Push button style heaters, so that obviously when you're in there and using it, and it also has LED strip lighting in the ceiling, so it does become in winter a place that you could spend some time. It has some almost light blinds that are drawn up and down that provide some coverage on the front and the sides if you want to have them up or down, so you can create an internal space to keep the heat more inside during winter. And you can picture it with sort of new tables and chairs and baskets with blankets and things. I think the key here is we're trying to find a space that can be used more weeks of the year than what we've currently got and provide us with that extra space. So we've provided the information in there. Luckily, the company have provided the drawings. It's all right. Right, there you go.
Right. I now need to, can I do this first, please? All right. As the business of the meeting has not been completed by 10 p.m, in accordance with Standing Order 11.5A, I propose that the meeting continued until no later than 10:30 p.m. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Right. All those in favour, please raise your hand. All those against? Abstention? 1 abstention. Okay. Now you can continue.
Absolutely fine. So yes, everything's in there. So obviously the quote we've received is that this project and what's been promoted on the front will cost 65,000, well over our threshold. So we will have to go out to full tender for that. So that price could vary and change. But at this present time, we're obviously asking for £65,000 to be funded from the Council Programme Fund earmark reserve, which currently stands at just over £95,000.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? It says that the glass barrier isn't included in that cost, but it looks very nice. So why have we not included that in the cost?
The glass barrier wasn't obviously part of what we were looking at when we asked them to provide it, but when they did the rendered drawing, they put it up there. We have asked the additional cost. They said you would allow an extra £15,000 for that. So it's up to you. I mean, if you would like us to include that for £15,000 extra, then
What's the views of the committee?
Yes.
This is your decision.
Yes. No,
No, Anne, okay, let's hold that until Anne's.
Yeah, okay, so what do you think? Sorry, does the 65K include glass sides or whatever they're?
They're roller sides. So yeah, you can almost see them in the top of the picture on 167. So they roll down from the ceiling as sides. They're a bit firmer. They're electric, I believe. So they come down and they can provide a bit of shading. They can provide a full wall, or they can go all the way up and it can be open depending on the time of year. I don't know.
The other thing is, with the heaters in it, how will that affect the carbon footprint?
It will increase our carbon footprint. So yeah, but well, what's interesting is our electricity supply for this building is entirely carbon neutral. So actually, within reason, anything we do in this building is carbon neutral because the supply is carbon neutral.
And you said there were touch ones, didn't you?
Yes.
So you only use what you need.
Would you? Oh, sorry, I haven't finished. Would you? Would you operate the heaters with no glass, with the sides open of the pergola?
No. So I mean, depending on the time of year, we would obviously be able to turn them off, so you wouldn't actually people would be able to use them. But at the same time, we can leave them on during evenings if it's getting cold. So a lot of pubs have that sort of facility, especially with obviously smoking rules. A lot of those style of kind of button pushed, they're not on most of the time. If someone goes outside for a cigarette, they turn it on to keep warm, and that's the intention. That if someone needed it, they could. But again, intention is you can provide baskets of blankets and try and encourage people to.
We do have a couple of those heaters already, which were installed a few years ago. They're not great because of the space and where they're mounted. But yeah, same principle.
And I'm just going to say, will it cause congestion if you have the fence around it?
Not necessarily. I mean, the intention when we've had a look at it is we actually would quite like to encourage people to come through the front door and make it a bit more of a secure space for people in the centre to use. There is the option, obviously, and we can consider it in designs of, you know, leaving a space in the glass barriers so we can go in, but at the moment, I think we would quite like to provide that as a place that you come in and you come and sit outside.
Right. You finished, Dan?
Yep.
Mike?
And we've just agreed a budget setting report. And here we are being presented with a report. We've just out of the blue, we're asked to approve 90-odd thousand pounds. I'm sorry, but you know, how do I want to know that this is the right £90,000 I want to be spending on this project, or rather £90,000 I'd rather be spending at Weeble Park for the play equipment? I mean, I'm sorry, but this is, you know, at 10 o'clock to be presented with this report out of the blue with 4 weeks into the financial year. Why wasn't this agreed when we set our capital programme at Christmas? I'm sorry, but it's not, in my view.
Response? Officers?
I mean, at this point in time, obviously, in terms of preparing for something like we have to get quotes and things from the meeting managers, so we couldn't feed this in. I would also say that, you know, historically, for many years, the future projects have very rarely been fed into the budget process, and that is absolutely one of the reasons we're changing that budget process this year. So those will be added in future. But that hasn't happened historically, so we are in this position. We do have £95,000 in that capital fund programme, and we believe this will be a good use of that money for the centre.
Well, I'd rather spend £95,000 on play equipment in Weeble Park.
It's an earmark reserve specifically for the Oakwood Centre. You know, the way earmark reserves, you know this, the way earmark reserves
I don't recall are £95,000.
Yes, because we put money in there in the budget every year to top up earmark reserve on here, earmark reserve on the 3G pitch, earmark reserve on something, chapel, earmark reserve. That is the way the finances in this council operate.
An earmark reserve for this project? I don't remember seeing an earmark.
No, you're not listening. No, the earmark reserve is to be spent on anything associated with the Oakwood Centre, be it new.
Can I just point out, Chair, that the proposal is for that funding to be from the capital programme, which isn't allocated specifically for this building, rather than the earmark.
And just for clarity, the actual the 95,000, because there was an agreement by this committee in, was it December or was it in November? Yeah, sorry, November for spend that had originally been spent from the for the toilets, the Oakwood Centre toilets, which was about £65,000, had originally been agreed to spend from the capital programme. It was agreed that that would actually be taken from the money that was received from Silver Fox Crescent as a capital investment. So that 65,000 went back into this pot. So this pot is higher than it was then because that money transferred over. So essentially, that's been funded by that.
We're following this, June.
No.
But you're right, Mike. That 95,000 is unallocated at the moment. That is just.
But it is dedicated. The way earmark reserves. I don't understand. It's very simple. An earmarked reserve is marked for a specific facility. 95,000 can, because it's an earmarked reserve for the Oakwood Centre, can only be spent on.
It's a capital programme.
Okay, I know that, but I'm trying to explain
not the Oakwood Centre specifically.
No, but I'm just trying to explain how earmarked reserves work. No, so we have earmarked reserves specifically for a facility, and it's done that, so it's ring fenced to be spent on that facility. You know, put the capital, so whether it's capital revenue or whatever, that's where the earmark reserve. And we've got probably 10, 15 of them all set up to do that.
It's in the budgetary report that's provided each year at the back, and there's a sheet which lists all of the earmark reserves that are stored and what they are.
There's about £500,000-600,000 when you add them all up together, all there, but they are ring fenced for particular facilities. So can I take Magic, because he hasn't had a chance? Sorry, Kay, then Magic.
Well, if anybody's been looking lately, most of the facilities in the pubs, And in the other areas, they've got these super duper areas, and a lot of them are glassed in. It is something that will bring people into the place because it's obviously in the winter or even in the spring or the autumn in this country, you freeze if you haven't got somewhere else that you can outside. People like to sit outside, but they don't like the cold. And I really think this is a fantastic opportunity to make this centre really work.
Thank you for that. Majid?
Yeah, but you have mentioned just now that this money is allocated for this purpose. Is it?
No, I was talking about generally earmarked reserves. You, would you like to explain it's a capital?
This particular is a capital programme. So each year, and when capital programme funding is set up, money is put aside for specific capital programmes. So that's anything that's capital investment. So often recommendations come forward from officers, whether that's from officers or councillors for capital investment, comes to this committee. You consider whether to spend that on that particular project. You obviously can choose not to do on that project if there are other projects, and we've obviously got a large number of other projects that can be funded with any of that money. So that is, we don't have the ability to present every single project to you all at the same time. So as they come available, we will present.
I'm just adding to Mike's point, like, is it regarding to standing orders? It can't be changed, or it can be changed?
It can only be used for, it's capital programme funds, so it can only be used for capital investment on an item, an asset, rather than on a revenue cost. So to run a service or provide something like that has to be spent on a physical item. But it's not defined that that's this building, anything in particular. It could be on any capital fund.
Okay, I'm going to do Anne and then Robert, and I would like to draw this to conclusion.
Yeah, in the past, the Oakwood Centre has needed lots of repairs. Is the earmark reserve for the Oakwood Centre really meant to be for repairs, or is that something else, or does it not?
The Oakwood Centre, there is a separate Oakwood Centre buildings and facilities earmark reserve. That can be used on anything for the Oakwood Centre that needs to happen that comes out. But that's a separate earmark reserve for the Oakwood Centre. This is the capital programme.
Yeah.
Robert.
Thanks. I love Mike. He's great. He's a really nice chap. But we've had this agenda for 8 days, so anything on it shouldn't suddenly be a surprise, Mike, at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. You know, we might want to think, oh crikey, let's get to bed and let's bash through this. But we've had this agenda for 8 days, and I think if we've got any concerns, we should discuss them amongst ourselves in our WhatsApp group. We should email Keith or Kevin, and we should, bring these up to the fore. To compare Weeble Park with the Oakwood Centre, Weeble Park won't bring in any extra income. So my initial thought was, hang on, we're building a huge seating area for Crumbs, but hang on, their rent is based on their turnover. So if they build their turnover, we are going to get this money back. And £60,000 for this sort of building is actually pretty good value. Yes, we should have a glass screen around it because it gives some control to small ones that might be running around, because that road is quite busy nearby. I think it's an excellent thing. And on another note, I do think maybe, 180 pages today. I do think maybe we should be looking at for next year some slightly shorter agendas and maybe some more meetings and possibly some subcommittees to look at this spending, because that seems to be a topic tonight. Okay, thank you.
Keith, can I just add one thing? I think if we're future-proofing the theatre, I know it's been mentioned, but this space will be needed.
Yes, absolutely.
If we're going to run that theatre as anything like a going concern, you need a big bar, you need a place where people can get chucked out to at half-time. So, I think we do need to seriously consider this.
Okay. One last chance. Majid, you've hardly any speak. Keep going. Keep going.
What type of options were considered, like when it was designed? Do we need this fancy looking one, or do we need some ugly room on which we can also build first floor later years?
Like an extension, a physical extension that would have that ability to build up on it would, the cost at the moment would be around about £200,000 as a starting point for the amount of space we've got. The structure of the building can't necessarily support anything attached to it. So from a veranda point of view, which is something that is attached to a building and hangs off, the building wouldn't really deal with that. So we do need a self-standing structure. We found 4 varieties of options. The cheapest was 45,000. And for what you got for your money, it was nowhere near as nice as this. And the additional cost would, for the benefit, there was no lighting, there was no heating, there were no sides, the roof wouldn't turn, the roof was just a pure glass roof that would then take a lot of cleaning and things. So in terms of the options and the spend for what you get, this was absolutely the best option that came back. They were the only company that priced with render. But as I said, this needs to go to full tender. So whilst we've had indicative cost of this is 65, and that company, I'm sure will come back and say, 65 what it is. It may be that there are other options that come forward that are cheaper than that. We'll have to wait and see.
We'll have the option, by the way, because it goes to tender, to turn around and say, we're not going to do it. Okay, so you'll have another bite of the cherry, and you can have the final word.
Can we have separate votes for the pergola with the fence and the pergola without the fence?
Well, okay, I'm going to propose something that's effectively that.
Oh,
All right. So we've got 3 recommendations here. I want to add the 4th that basically says members approve the allocations of 15,000 for the grass. So it is a separate vote. Anne, is that okay with you?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So can I just take the 3 we've got there? Are we all okay to take these as one? So the 3 that we've got in the paper, all those in favour, please show.
168.
168. All right, all those in favour, please show. The 3.
5-4.
All those against?
1 against.
Can I have my vote recorded, please?
And 1 abstention? Yeah, okay, thank you. Now, the additional recommendation that members approve the allocation of 15,000 from the Council Capital Programme Fund.
It would come.
Right.
Yes.
To fund the installation of the glass, whatever, wall or something. Barrier. All those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5-4.
All those against? Yeah, recorded vote.
Recorded, please.
All those abstaining. Thank you. Boy, we're lively tonight. Right, moving on. Are there any future agenda items? If so, please can you let Matthew know? Publicity and website, any items to be publicised, again, please let Matthew know. And I now have a statement I have to read. To resolve that in line with Standing Order 12.2, in view of the confidential nature of the business about to be transacted in relation to personnel matters, it is advisable in the public interest that the public and press are temporarily excluded and they are asked to withdraw for item 20 on the agenda. Right. So item.
You need to take a vote on that.
Oh yeah, all those in favour, please show. Unanimous.
You can just give me a moment to stop the live.